and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Will Tarashuk, aka the returning champion on the Ambiguous Podcast Solutions. Today, I am speaking with Anna Charles, who is the host of the 90 Days Later podcast. Anna helps people stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. The key word there is over drinking, not drinking, period, over drinking. So that piqued my interests. You know, alcoholism runs in my family as well as a lot of families in the United States. But Anna, where are you joining us from today? Are you from London, UK? Where are you from?
That's right. Well, I'm calling in from London, the United Kingdom, in the middle of the afternoon.
So, this is just a general, first off, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you here. Just tell everyone, who you are, what you do, and what brings you here today.
Okay, so as you know, I'm Anna, and I coach women who want to stop over drinking. And really, I'm serving sort of not the alcoholic market. And this really comes from my story. So for years and years and years, I was a corporate exec. I worked in Fortune 500 companies, you go to all these events with customers and resellers, and there's alcohol everywhere. And there's kind of this culture, you pick up a glass and you just sort of do your business, you stay in the bar. And I realized after a while that I really wasn't enjoying it. And it wasn't that I was an alcoholic. I was really high performing, got a family, great job. I wasn't missing work or anything. But it got to the point where I would, 6 o'clock, would come at home and I'd sort of run to the fridge on automatic pilot, pour a glass of wine. And think, what am I doing here? And it got to the point where I thought, I just am not enjoying this and it's hard. I just wanted to find a way to drink less. I didn't want to have to say, look, I'm an alcoholic, because I knew I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I sort of did some research and figured out how to fix this, I would say, for myself. And then I decided, look, I know there must be lots and lots of others out there. And this is they're called the gray drinkers. These are the people who aren't in the alcoholic category, but really are kind of feeling a little out of control. Anyway, So I decided I want to quit the corporate thing and I'm going to go full bore into this. And that's what I now do. And I thought, a podcast would be a great way to talk about it, in fact. So
well, it definitely is. It definitely is. And you keep them short, sweet, and to the point. Just monologues is telling pretty much what you do, and how you got to where you are, which is a great idea. Like, if you're going to do something like this, a podcast is a perfect avenue, which we are going to get to. But I do want to kind of touch upon just drinking in general. Now, I also do not consider myself an alcoholic. Never was. Like, I enjoy a drink. I never get nowadays out of control. But there was a time in college where I felt like I thought that I was drinking too much, but I didn't like the person I was when I was over drinking. It got to the point my friends had to go, Will, like, you need to simmer down a little bit because you're you're too loud, essentially.
Yeah.
So this whole podcast, this whole kind of program kind of speaks to me. It's like, oh, I did this. So I severely cut back. I now have a personal program of myself where it's just I never drink alone. I don't do any drugs alone. I don't smoke weed alone. I don't drink alone.
Yeah.
And that's the only drugs I really do. So last Saturday, me and my friend are watching watching wrestling, and we got a 30 rack for the pay-per-view. There's still 7 beers in my fridge that are almost 14 days old that just haven't been touched because I live alone.
Yeah.
So, I find that very interesting. Now, why do you think people have an issue with drinking to begin with?
Well, I think it's because we go out there and it really just becomes a habit, actually. I don't think we realize we're in these areas, because you can have a drink, I'll have a drink, And the thing about alcohol is it's really designed to make us feel good. And as humans, we want to feel good. I mean, that's what we all want, whether that is connection, whether it's to feel confident, whether it's to, feel like you're one of the gang. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of reasons. And alcohol enables that, because it brings down, it sort of takes us out of ourselves a little bit and makes us feel good. And we like that. We're pack animals, humans, right? We like to be one of the crowd. Because on the flip side, so if you look at the fear a lot of people have when they come to me about, and I've been through this so many times, when you say no to a drink, how ostracized you feel. It really shows that in very clear. This alcohol is the only thing that you can do is when you say no. People say, why? You're not an alcoholic, are you? So I think a lot of people carry on drinking because they don't want to be the one who's nursing, the cranberry juice in the corner. I think she's got a problem, but she doesn't want to tell us. And so I think we carry on because we just want to feel part of that. And then there comes a point when we think, for heaven's sake, this really isn't fun anymore. And I'm not even having fun, even though this is what I have taught myself and what society, frankly, tells us this is how you have fun, right? So it was all part. I think that's why people start, and that's why they carry on. Because think about it, we weren't born, any of us, wanting to drink. I mean, certainly when I was 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, I didn't. Of course, you don't drink when you're younger, and it took me years actually to get to even like the stuff. And and then you sort of get into this flow where it's just habits, like cleaning your teeth. 6 o'clock comes and the white wine is there, even if I don't really want it.
People do love having their glass of wine with dinner. Don't get me wrong, when I'm out at a restaurant, like a nice steakhouse, I do get my glass of red wine, of course. And I enjoy my time at the bar, or in London, as I say, the pub. I enjoy going to bar. I only drink beer, really. I love beer. I'm one of those guys.
Which is do you like the bitter that we have over here? The warm stuff?
I've actually never had the warm beer. So that sounds intriguing. It sounds very intriguing. One day I'm going to get over there and I'm going to make sure I go and try the warm beer and tell them Anna Charles sent me. But now you say your program is not for alcoholics.
That's right.
It's for people who are drinking to avoid withdrawal symptoms or believe you are addicted. So that's interesting to me because I feel like, if you're putting this out there, right, a lot of alcoholics, that's kind of your audience. And when they reach out to you, how do you deal with alcoholics then?
So alcoholics, I would actually what I say is that if alcoholics want to look at any of the free content I put out there, certainly I'm sure the podcast can be of help to them, absolutely. But I'm not a doctor. I'm very conscious I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to get into the realms of saying, well, this is what you should do, because if you are drinking to really avoid withdrawal, then that's a whole other ball game. And I'm the first to say I'm just not qualified to deal with that. So I would say, by all means, use my content. I do master classes and things. Absolutely. If something resonates, that's brilliant. But I really don't want to get into the point where somebody, I feel that they would be relying on me to help them, and I'm just not qualified, because that is a total kettle of fish. I'm on about the people like who I was, who just finds that they just get sick and tired of drinking when they really just don't want to. So that's really very much my audience.
Well, no, that makes sense. If you're not qualified to help people, you probably shouldn't help them. I think it sounds as easy as it is, but there's a lot of people out there who's like, no, I'll help you regardless. But do you think, because that's a big part of your business, do you think you would want to eventually reach out and get those qualifications so you can, one, help those people, but also put some more money in your pocket?
You know what? It's absolutely something I've thought about. It's sort of on my longer term roadmap. But I think actually, if I can catch and help the people, because there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are in this, as I said, this gray category where they haven't strayed into the alcoholism. If I can catch people there and help them because see, here's the thing: when you're in this category, you aren't publicly telling anybody I've got a problem, or, and it becomes this very, very silent struggle as well, because you don't even want to tell your family sometimes that, I think this is getting a little bit too much to me. So if I can help people there, because this is really about service, right? This is really about helping. If I can help people there, then that avoids them moving into that other category. And, that's a huge win for me, and that's a huge win for them. So that's really And there's AA. There's lots of solutions out there for people who really are in the alcoholic category. And again, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, and I think that's why I love my program, that it's all about, it comes from firsthand experience. And I think you can then infuse that with, yourself, when you've lived through something, you're doing this stuff with podcasts, it really, I think, makes the difference, rather than just what you've heard. But yeah, maybe in the future I will train up in that, but I've got enough going on right now to not need that.
Well, let's talk. You brought up AA. Let's talk about AA a little bit, because AA is interesting to me. I've never been to AA, never been to an AA meeting. I think I know a few people who have, but their whole philosophy is a 12-step program, and you can never drink. You just the goal is, do not touch the bottle ever. You cannot do it. You are weak. And for some people, I think that's true. Mm-hmm. But I think also there could be a better way. Like the idea of just completely cut this out of your life, it's toxic. There has to be a way to almost live with it, as opposed to, because it's so hard to live without it. There has to be a way to teach people how to drink responsibly. Literally, it says in all the ads. So what are your thoughts on AA and I guess the messaging behind AA? Because I'm also not an expert, and I've also never been through the program. So I don't necessarily understand fully, but just from outside looking in, it seems like, this is a good program, but it seems like you're kind of going a little too hard in the paint. You make a basketball reference.
Again, for people, and it works for many people, and I'm not going to diss that at all. If it works for you, then that's great. But the big problem I have with it is that it sort of puts alcohol in the driving seat, right? Because you have to say, I have no control. So the minute it comes into my body, I'm just going to go wild, and I'm going to drink 10 bottles of whiskey, and my family won't see me for days. And the thing that what I'm all about is knowing that you are in control, because the alcohol is just, if you look at it like this, it's just liquid. Mm-hmm. It's just liquid in a bottle. I mean, that's really all it is, right? And it's not living and breathing. It's just liquid in a bottle, and it's been fermented or whatever, but that's what it is. Got different taste. It requires us to pick it up. I mean, there's many steps. It's actually easier to not drink than to drink. You've got to pick up the bottle. You have to pour it in. You have to put it in your mouth. You have to put it in. And so I think this whole concept of that having control is something that doesn't jive with me, because I get into more how we feel about it and what we're thinking about that and how it makes us feel. And what is it disguising, right? So a lot of people, I say, in the corporate world, they drink to feel confident, because they go into these big meetings and they don't feel confident. So that's why they're drinking. So I dig into that, rather than saying the alcohol has all the power. No, you have all the power. Mm-hmm. Right? It's all up to what you do with it. And so that's, I guess, my big thing with AA. And also, I don't like the idea of having to say, I'm totally helpless, and I'm going to have this forever. If people want to drink after going through they can. Now, I will say it requires more work, right? Because alcohol really really does make us feel great. It releases lots of dopamine, and can make you feel really, really, really super. So it's harder to drink less. But that I started out not wanting to quit entirely. And there was this big celebration of the day, and I will say I had half a glass of wine, perfectly fine. Didn't really enjoy it, didn't really want it, but that's it. And it wasn't a big deal. And that's what I try to tell people. So don't make the booze a big deal.
Right. So let's talk about your coaching program. How exactly does it work? Now, you say 90-day program. First off, 90 days, it's a great start. 90-day program. It's 3 months. It's just like, you're in, you're out, here's what you're going to learn. So you do coaching. So how exactly does the coaching process work?
So the coaching process is, I do one-on-one coaching. So I have 2 sessions set up with everybody per week, and I can do more if we need it. So we'll basically step through, where are they? Where do they want to be, right? Because not everybody wants to quit entirely. Some people just want to drink a little less or whatever. So we figure that out. I've got some quick start tools that we start working with immediately to start rewiring what's going on. And this is all about what we're thinking, how we're feeling about things, and the actions we take. So we go through that. And then I have a number of then worksheets and videos and other things that come in, that if somebody's really struggling on, for instance, when they're flying. I mean, a lot of people, when they travel, their schedule's all up in the air. And they'll have a drink in the airport. They'll drink at weird times of day. You drink at 9 a.m. because you're timed. So I have some tools that help them with this. And we really just step through and we figure out what's happening for that person. I also do this where people need it. Really cool thing, I think, where if they are in a situation, if you know you're going to a wedding or a celebration or something, and we can agree, in fact, they can text me, they can call me, right? And we can be there so that if they're feeling a bit wobbly, we can chat through, well, what's going on? Why are you thinking this? To help them to go through and do this. But the real reason why the 90-day thing, in fact, my last podcast, Will, was on why 90 days, is I see it as sort of a series of sprints, right? We're going to work on this one thing and we're going to go full bore and really work on it. And then we're going to work on the next thing, because I think you need that. There needs to be some intensity with this. And the more failure, frankly, the better. I like it when people fail. I like it when people give in and have a drink, because then we say, so what happened?
That's how you learn.
Let's learn.
That's how you learn.
Right? Let's learn from that. And then do it again. Now let's learn. And then it gets to the point when you think, that's what happened. That's what I did. And that's why you can do it within the 90 days and it's permanent, right? Now, and I also say, if people don't feel what I would say complete freedom around alcohol within the 90 days, I'll carry on working with them until they have, if they have, shown up and done all the work, I for no extra fee, because I'm so sure that, this works. So that's how that is.
So how do you tell people to deal with peer pressure? Because particularly with men, if you got the friends who isn't drinking, it's the goal of the group to get that person to drink, unless they're a designated driver. If they're not a designated driver, they're always saying, come on, Will, let's take some shots. This is gin. You love gin. Actually, Chris, I hate gin. I hate gin. Give me a bud, right? It's like, so how do you tell people to deal with peer pressure?
So I've actually, one of the things I've just written is I have 111 responses to why aren't you having a drink? And one of the things I say to people is just plan it. So it's going to happen. So expect it to happen. Because if you know something's going to happen, then you're not so freaked out by it. I like people to even plan ahead. What is it you're going to say? Put yourself in that position, right? Really take yourself there. Take yourself in that bar where people are doing that to you and say, so what will I be feeling at the time? What am I going to say? What's my response going to be? And to really do that. The other thing I say is look forward to the next day, right? Look to yourself. Imagine how you feel when you wake up the next morning, Will, and you didn't have that gin, right? That you're actually feeling really, well, you're not going to have a headache for a start. And then here's the deal. Think ahead, another day. How would you feel? You think, my goodness, not only did I not have a headache, but I didn't give in. It's okay. And the thing I have found is that when people, it really is a shock. Peer pressure was a huge, huge thing for me. Once people hear it, they don't believe you to start with, and so it takes a few times. They really don't, they think it's just, you're just mucking around. And then it kind of gets boring to them. It's no big deal. And you're the one who's thinking all this stuff. So it's really about being prepared, just going in and saying what you say, and then that's it. And so that's how I did it.
And why do you work particularly with women? Because men out there have a big drinking problem as well. And that's just, again, it's like you're cutting off half your market.
Well, and I won't turn men away. I've had a couple of men interested in what, I'm not going to, but this is to do with how you position versus, who you end up with. I really, as I said just now, alcoholics for medical reasons, no. But if men come, of course I would. But the positioning here is really to women because, again, I was looking at from the corp, and I did all this research on this. I mean, the stats are clear. Executive corporate women are 3 or 4 times more likely to overdrink than women in the lower level clerical jobs, right? So in terms of, it's that pressure, it's that stress.
Yeah.
And I get it. And there's all this hormonal stuff that goes on. That's all part and parcel of it. So men out there, if you want to do this, I will take you. But I really, again, where this came from, the whole main positioning is definitely towards women.
Do you encourage people who drink this, like, listen, just try other activities like hiking or drawing, video games or reading, anything like that?
Well, I encourage people to not distract themselves. I think if you want to drink and you think, well, I'm going to go for a hike instead, that's just pushing the problem down the road because you still want the drink, right? You still had that thought. Tomorrow at 4:00, whenever it was, you're still going to think, I still want that drink. Well, I'm not going to go hike again. I did that yesterday. instead, what I find is people start to figure out what is lying beneath that desire to drink. Is it, what is it that they want? You find that your life gets bigger and you do these other things because you want to do them not just to distract yourself. It's really important to understand why you're doing why you're having these thoughts to do this. Yeah, distraction is not something I say at all. I mean, though, because if you really want to plan ahead, maybe that's one thing, but certainly not do it as a, to avoid, because you need to confront what's going on in you, why you want to do this.
No, that's a good way of putting it. You just don't want to just kick an issue down the road. That's true with anything. So let's move over to the podcast itself.
Yeah.
So you started very recently, correct? This year?
Yes. Correct. I'm 8 episodes in already.
All right, 8 episodes in. So what's it like starting a podcast in 2021?
Well, so I did it. Last year I actually finished a completely different, unrelated thing. I finished writing a book actually, and I did an audiobook. A friend said, "Why do you do an audiobook?" So I figured out how to do an audiobook. So I recorded an audiobook, and that was what gave me the thing. Maybe I can use that same knowledge to use the same tools and so on into creating a podcast. So, I mean, and then I kind of got into listening to them, and I listened to the ones you have, and I've got about 10 on my phone. And yeah, it's fun in the sense of I like it as a way, I think of it as a way of just talking to one person. When I do it, I say my monologue thing, I'm talking to a person. I always imagine a person sitting with this issue and I'm talking to them. This is not talking at them, but to them to say, these are some of the things to think about and that I've been through. And yeah.
So what was the hardest part? Because for me, I started back in 2015 where, services like an Anchor or even like a Podbean, I think Podbean might have been around, but like an Anchor specifically didn't exist. So it wasn't as easy as creating an account, logging in, and boom, you have an RSS feed. I had to figure out not how to make it from scratch, but I had to figure out how to create a generator and connect it to a WordPress website. And to this day, I don't know how I did it, but I figured it out. So what was your hardest part? What was your biggest struggle in actually starting the podcast? A technical or mental perspective?
Probably more mental in terms of, so technical, as I said, I did this audiobook, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the tools that you have today, it really is click an account. It's very Noddy-ish, right? And you can drag this bit of music and that, do it like that. So that actually wasn't too difficult. But I think just actually it's you're in this for the long haul. I mean, you've been doing this for years and years. And that was the other thing, thinking if I start this, Anna, you've got to do this. Maybe not every week, but certainly, you do. I know one of your people you had on the interview, they'd done like 100 episodes in a year or something, which is absolutely incredible. So I think that was it. Just knowing that you're in this for the long haul, that as you build the listenership up, you're going to have to carry on doing it. And the time, I mean, it does take quite a bit of time.
Yeah, that's like, so I had an introductory call with someone the other day. He does like vertical farming in like metropolitan areas, and he said he wanted a podcast for his business. Now it's like, first off, that's a phenomenal idea. Like my brain started turning. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. But I tell you, what's your budget and how much time do you think it's going to take? He said, my budget is 0, and I hope it doesn't take too long. I go, well, that's your first problem, because like it's going to take a lot. A podcast is a lot of work. Anyone who's looking to do a podcast, okay, what do you want? First off, ask, what do you want out of it? Okay, so like I want a secondary income stream, a networking tool for my business, leads funnel. It's like, yeah, all that's great. How much time do you think it's going to take? It's a lot. It's a lot. So what was your expectation going in versus the reality of what you're seeing now?
Well, I think I wasn't worried about the content. I know a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about the content, and because I had decided I wasn't going to do interviews, although I'm interested in your thoughts on the difference between sort of the monologue type thing that I do versus the interview ones. But I knew I wasn't going to. So it's kind of up to me to create it. So that was okay. But as actually the writing it is just the beginning. I mean, really, it's just being, and that's hard enough because then you've got the recording, and then you do, and I do this all myself, all the editing, and then there's all the posting. Well, we've got to post it here,
Yeah,
and you can now create these video things, and then these, what are they called? The audiograms.
Audiograms, yeah.
Like,
yeah, tell me about it.
You can do this, and that. My goodness. Okay, so I think it would be very easy to kind of go mad. So I pretty much set aside 3/4 of a day a week to write the thing, record it, and and I would ultimately like to be able to sort of block do this where I'm a few episodes ahead, but I just haven't got to that point yet. Yeah.
So you write out your podcast. How scripted are they? Because listening to it, it doesn't sound scripted, which is an amazing feat. Because in my regular, in my other previous jobs, we've had guests on where they're reading from a script because that's what their PR team wants, which I get. But in my opinion, it makes for garbage content. But if you're reading from a script and making it sound like it's not a script, that's a talent.
Well, I'm not. No, it's not heavily. I've got. I do my. I sort of. I had years and years of creating presentations and all this stuff in the corporate world. So I create my outline and then my bullet points, and then I sort of flesh bits out, but I don't script it completely. But I do, this is the weird thing, right? I do need to make sure I know where I'm going with it, because otherwise you get so into the words, and then the technology, you think, oh, what am I saying here? Where am I? It's a weird, I don't know if you ever have that. It's a kind of a weird thing where you're in it, but yeah, it's, I just want to, having the words there brings you back to it. But I do make sure I get the points out, because I also want to stay on topic, because it would be very easy to start on one area and then go off into 10 other things, and then that just wouldn't be helpful to anybody.
Right. No, I'm glad you do bullet points. That's essentially what I do. Like, I'm looking at this page right now with all my questions, a lot of bullet points, a lot of talking points. But I say this to everybody: don't be afraid to go off script. Like, the bullet points are there, yes, to guide you, but you're the host. You're in control.
Yeah.
So how do you ever go off script? Because even this podcast, we've gone off script a little bit. I've gone out of order a little bit. Now, how often do you kind of just use the bullet points to go off script and then go, oh, I'm right back in it?
No, I do it. And that's okay, as long as I don't ramble, right? Because there can be this, and I'd like these to be short and sweet. I don't like to go over about 15 minutes. And if I find I'm rambling, then that doesn't help anybody. And so I'll, then I'll drag myself, and maybe I'll cut some stuff out there. I will edit myself, but as long as I also spend a lot of time after I've written the thing to really just get into it and make sure I'm feeling good about it, and I know what I really what I want, what wants to come over. I mean, that's so much more important than the words. And what are your thoughts on sort of the monologue type versus the interview? I'm really interested in that, because I know a lot of people do the interviews, and I haven't branched into that yet.
Well, the answer is always that the P stands for personal. The P in podcast stands for personal. So really, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can do whatever you think is best. Me personally, it can be difficult for me to listen to solo shows because my mind drifts. Like, that's just me personally. But a lot of solo shows are very, very successful, especially for you do 15, 20 minutes. There is definitely benefit and value in you doing a solo show, because you are the coach, you are the person people listen to. However, one question I did have for you is, would you ever think of bringing your clients on the show to talk about if they're comfortable, of course, to talk about their story, their struggle, and how you helped them, or how you wish they helped you better? Because I think that is something incredibly beneficial, not only to you, to them, and to people who are thinking of using your services, as well as your audience. Like, it's a win-win for literally everybody. That might be a tough sell for some of your clients, but if they're up to it.
You're absolutely right. Yes, would love to do it. I think there comes into confidentiality. As I say, so many people come in, and they really, this has taken them a lot to even say, look, I think I need to talk to somebody about this, but I'm not, I don't need all this other stuff, but this is who I am. And just to be able to, because I don't like to label people at all. We don't talk about having problems. This is just something that we're working through. So yes, but that is something I've come up against already. So it's a case of just, I figure the more I do the podcast and it gets out there and the clients get comfortable with that, with hearing, my voice out there and talking about the stuff they've been through, that would then become a reality.
Right. You could also branch out to a lot of different aspects too. Like you could talk to doctors, right? People, AA leaders, right? The people who are in AA or have come out of AA, you have their 10-year chip, right? They love telling their story because they're genuinely helping others who are in the same situation. So people like that, like when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, doing the actual program, I could totally understand why they wouldn't want to be on a podcast. I wouldn't want to be on the podcast. However, after the program, 6 months later, you go, hey, how you doing? Want to check in? Want to be my guest, my podcast? I just want to see how you're doing, right? Something like that, you'd probably find more success. Or just keep it on alcohol. Talk to people in distilleries, right? How they make the alcohol, right? That could be a little bit of crossing swords, which is like, okay, you're making this alcohol. Do you ever think about I don't want to call maybe be like a loaded question, but you ever think about how you're affecting people, right? Like stuff like that. Or if you're generally curious, like, how wine is made, how you come up with the levels of alcohol to put in, like, and how all that work is for educational purposes, something like that could also be fascinating.
That would be useful. And I don't know about how it is in the US, but certainly there's been an explosion in these alcohol-free drinks as well now, which a lot of people say that's not necessarily a good thing because it's kind of pretend alcohol. You still got the desire that's going in your head, but I actually disagree. I think there's some really nice stuff. There's really some nice stuff out there. And obviously there's the market has moved on where that's helping people as well, because it is normalized and that it actually is okay that you don't, drink alcohol, but you still want to be hanging out in the bar. Just because you don't drink doesn't mean because I go to bars all the time. I go to restaurants all the time. I mean, you don't sort of I don't sit in a cave and say, not going to go near any of it.
So my advice to you would be definitely branch out, because you're doing a solo show on a very particular topic, and there's only so many things you can talk about before you run out of ideas, right? And with guests, just more ideas come, they keep flowing, and you can keep going forever. Because like you just started. How long do you think you're going to keep going? How long do you want to keep going? Like, is this something you're going to do to get a time, or is something after a year, I think my mission is accomplished?
No, I think this is, as long as I'm working in this field, I intend for this to be something I do, because I see it as a great way to help people for free, right? It gives people a voice who are in this situation where they don't fit into this other alcoholic category, but they want some help. And frankly, it's a marketing tool. It's a way of going out there and reaching people. And I kind of enjoy it actually as well. It is a time sink, but it's fun to sit there and think, this is to think of. That's why I say when I record them, I'm always thinking of someone listening, always imagining in my mind's eye somebody listening to them. And the joy that gives me to think that I might be helping people who are listening enough, even if they don't work with me, that's fine. Give them the impetus to say, right, I'm going to do something about this. So I have no end date on this at all.
That's good. That's what I like to hear. So why do you keep them under 20 minutes? When it comes to time with podcasts, it's the same. Like someone's like, how long does my podcast be? I just tell them however long it takes you to make your point across until you're happy. Right? But 20 minutes or 15, 20 minutes, a lot of people do that. Short content. I prefer a long form. Like I aim for an hour. If I go under an hour, I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think the hour is a sweet spot, because I consider podcasting the purest form of communication, especially in a day like today, where people don't know how to communicate anymore, whether it's online, on the news, et cetera, et cetera. Podcasting is just one-on-one, me and you, let's talk. So why keep them 20 minutes? I know it is just you don't want to ramble, but was that something you had going in, or is that just something that kind of came about?
Yeah, it pretty much is what I had going in, because I think it's also speaks to how I use podcasts. I use them a lot when I'm listening to them as I go out for a morning walk, or right. I'm doing, I don't have time. And actually, if I get into an hour, I start to think, this is probably rubbish really, but I don't have time for that, because I really like to listen and engage with it. And so I think if I can get to about 20 minutes, I can fit that in. I mean, I can be doing, frankly, I listen to podcasts when I'm doing the cleaning, right? Yep. I have my headphones in, because it's such a boring thing to do. And it really takes me out into listening. So that was really why it was my personal experience. And I guess and of course, if I'm just doing these solo, I fully expect and would anticipate that if I were getting into interview type things, and of course, I'm sure they would run longer, because then there's more voices and there's more thoughts going into it as well. But for now, yeah, it's just how I like to consume, and and I think if I enjoy it, then that's going to come across in the content I create as well.
And you do everything by yourself. Do you do all the recording, all the editing? Like, do you have any professional experience in any of this, or is this something you literally just learned on the fly on your own?
So I learned it. So I learned it for my audiobook last year. I've got sons who are fairly technical, so I can help ask them about microphones and things. But yeah, pretty much do it all myself. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about doing it in 2021, where there are these tools where people, and I'm not a techie person at all. I mean, you ask any of my family, they say Anna isn't, the one to go to if the Wi-Fi goes down. But yeah, I think it's just a bit of trial and error. Again, my program, I talk about fail and learn and fail and learn. And I failed and learned and failed and learned as my way through it. I mean, I had a few takes, Will, before I even released anything. There was lots of behind the scenes stuff, I'm sure.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Would you ever consider outsourcing just to kind of make your life easier?
For sure. I mean, I think if I look at the podcast, look at the value I bring to it, it's the content, and it's at the moment sort of the speaking element of it. Absolutely. There's when I'm busier and when the business is bigger, there's no point me spending my time doing the editing and all the rest of it. No, right. I mean, I would, and I'd want professionals at that point to do that. And it's kind of cool that I can do it now, because it means I have this reach, but I don't anticipate in a year's time doing it all myself if things go well.
So talk to me about the relationship between your podcast and like your coaching. So how do you balance what you do in the podcast versus what you teach in the sessions? Because you don't want to give away too much for free on the podcast.
You don't want to give away too much. But I do want, but there's an element here. It's like one of the analogies you use is if you wanted to learn to ride a bike. Well, if you've never ridden a bike before, right? So you can watch all these YouTube videos now on how to ride a bike. You could listen to a podcast, and you could get one of the best cyclists in the world to explain to you in detail how to do it. And then you get on a bike and you're going to fall off, and you're going to say, well, what, they all told me all this stuff. So there's a big difference here between hearing stuff and me telling you, and absolutely, if you employ what I say, it works, but taking that and really doing it for yourself. That's the difference with coaching. The coaching is where I am working alongside, I'm really working with the person that has the requirement and makes it in a way that is good for them. So I see no problem with putting stuff out there. If people can work for free and never work with me and get the result they want from my material, frankly, I'm deliriously happy, because it means there's more people out there who are not struggling with this. And they might then say to somebody else, hey, there's this girl, this woman called Anna, she can do this. And maybe they then become a client. I think there's give and take in all of this. Yeah, I think it has to be some meat in it. Otherwise, why would anybody listen to it? I think.
Do you advise your clients to listen to the podcast as well?
Yeah, I do. I think not all of them do. I think they do as well. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, it would make sense, right? By the way, it's my podcast here. Yeah. So what's your audience like, and where do you see the most engagement?
So I think it's certainly, I'm getting more and more. So obviously it's fairly small still, apart from my clients, because I'm only just started. I'm starting to get questions in from people where they're saying, that's resonating with me. It's more that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Kind of that's the biggest thing right now, right? Thank goodness. I thought that I've been struggling with this. So I'm getting questions. And in fact, what I want to do with that is I want to turn those questions into topics. That sort of becomes a bit of a flywheel here for future content. I can put into a content calendar. So it's fairly small right now, because I've only just started. And that's all part of the challenge, right, of getting out there in this sea of, when you started, there were probably only 3 podcasts or something. Now there's like a sea of them.
Oh no, 2015, there were a lot of podcasts.
Really?
Not as many as the word today, but podcasting's been around since
Yeah.
2005. They've been around a long, long time. Guy's name always escapes me. The Podfather. I forget his name. I can't be forgetting his name. I want to interview him too so badly. But he was the one who kind of started podcasting way back when, and RSS technology's been around since like the late 90s. So they've been around a long time. I talked to two people who started podcasting in like 2004. So
Wow.
yeah, 2015 there was a good amount, but not nearly as much as they are today. But a lot of people start now and then quit very, very fast. And you've been doing 8 episodes. You're still here, still going strong. So that's good. What keeps you going? What makes you there have to be some days where it's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm done. You gotta put yourself in and be like, no. I'm still doing this.
Do you know what makes it fun? Actually, is that I say to myself, this actually is fun, right? It's actually stepping and saying, this is fun. Actually, I mean, of all the things that you could be doing today, I mean, obviously putting to one side, lounging around on the beach, actually, this is fun, right? You get to do something that you enjoy. You get to talk about something that makes an impact. You get to, and where it comes to podcasts, you're actually doing it. And I quite enjoy the writing, done lots of writing privately for years. I enjoy it. So is it this or some corporate job where you're filling in reports and things? No. Actually, this is fun. I don't need anything more to get me enthusiastic for saying this is my choice. And if I didn't want to do this, I know I could go and choose and do something else, but I don't. So, what I'm saying? Actually, for me, just having the freedom to be able to choose to do this is the fun thing.
Right. Where's your idea?
I know.
Go ahead.
So lots of people don't have that in their lives. I know, and so I sort of feel very. I'm grateful for that.
It's therapeutic too. Podcasting for me is also therapy. Like I say this on a lot of these podcasts. Podcasting for me is very personal. It's a little selfish, but it's also for personal growth. Like again, the P stands for personal. So do you find that as well? Like how much has podcasting kind of made your personal life on a personal level better for you?
Again, as I said, if I'm helping, if I'm able to reach people who need the help, that's a good thing. I think once I got over the thing about hearing your voice, I mean, we all have this, right? You hear this all the time again. I can't stand the sound of my voice, my voice, but you try all these different things, ways of voice. And actually, one of the things I found was that when the best way for me, because I'm a fairly quick talker, is to just talk naturally, to be my fairly quick, speedy pace. Because when I tried, I was sort of slowing it down. I think, no, this just doesn't feel like me anymore. This is just like someone who's giving the content, but not putting their, who they are behind it. So yes, and of course, what I'm talking about is a very personal journey as well. I mean, this is something that a lot of people, A, don't want to admit to, and B, wouldn't dream of telling other people. So by that, by virtue of that, this isn't some business. This isn't business speak or anything. I mean, this is really a very personal journey and something that I know others do struggle with, and it's ultimately incredibly personal. Therefore,
so is the podcast more of a passion project or is it more of a business tool? Because it can be both, but you always lean one way or the other a little bit more.
That's a really interesting one. I mean, I suppose I started it as a business tool, because I thought this sounds like a good thing to do, right? Because I listen to these and, it's, as I said, it's a way to consume content. So it's more a business tool than a passion project. But again, what I'm talking about is incredibly personal. You can't help but have passion behind it, right? If that makes sense. I think, it's a little bit of both, but how I came to it is not where I am now. I mean, I certainly thought I'd try it out. And I say I'm only a newbie, 8 episodes. So ask me when I've got 25 in the can. That would feel like I would be, really much more long in the tooth on it.
All right. So what's next for you? What does your podcast look like in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I think certainly I want to be doing a mixture. I'd like to have other voices on there, but probably I would still imagine that I'd be doing these shorter chunks. I mean, if this works for my audience, these tips, pick a topic and then to work on that topic. Certainly, I think help with the tech. I'd like to be able to do much more stuff with that, and 1 or 2, 3 years, there's going to be 100 more ways that we can reuse this content in goodness knows what manner. So I'd like to do that. But I think at the end of the day, I'd still like it to be me talking to people about what they're going through and, encouraging them to come forward. There's no shame behind this. This is okay. And this is what you can do. And actually, where you think that you've sort of got a handle on it now, life can be so much better when you've got this. You stop, as I call the drinking thinking, right? There's all this drinking thinking. It's just a waste. It's a waste of life. So if I've got to the point where I'm still doing it in 2 or 3 years and still helping people, then that would be a delight. But who knows what will be by then in podcast technology.
Well, I look forward to seeing your journey, how you evolve, and where this road leads you. But Anna, that's the last question I have for you. Before we go, before you do all your plugs, do you have any other questions for me? It's a little curve I like to throw at the end of this podcast. The last question always goes to the guest.
No, I think really, as I said, just how I've been really interested in your opinions on how to do the podcast, and just really your advice earlier on. Sorry, I'm just gabbling a bit, I suppose, here, but just how does one?
You can plead the fifth if you got nothing else. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I've got fifth.
You got to plead the fifth. That's totally fine. Ladies and gentlemen, you can always plead the fifth when I ask you to ask a question on the spot. That is always a valuable, a real option. That's totally okay. Anna, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Please tell everyone where they can find you, your website, your podcast, your socials, anything you want to plug. The floor is yours.
Sure. So my website is 90 Days Later. So it's 90dayslater.co. And my podcast is 90dayslater.co. And you can reach me on Anna at 90dayslater.co. It's all very easy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that has been Anna Charles from the 90 Days Later podcast. Make sure you go check her out. And while you're checking her out, make sure you check me out. The best place to find me is Ambiguous Podcast Solutions.com to find all of our information, all of our services over there at APS, including audio editing. We do make audiograms, content creation. Of course, we are a podcast company. All of our podcast partnership information. You can get a page on our website, make your podcast, earn some passive income, as well as anything else we offer there. Head over to ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com and head to our podcast section. Find all of our podcast partners, including this podcast, the Ambiguous Podcast Solution, where all of my previous guests can be found. My other podcast, Talking with Tarashuk, where I talk to anyone I genuinely find interesting who does not have a podcast. Of course, this podcast is anyone I find genuinely interesting. They do have a podcast. You kind of got a little bit of both worlds. If you want to be a guest on this or that podcast, feel free to reach out to me at will@apspodcast.com. That's APSPODCAST.com. And if you make me go, ooh, if I find you genuinely interesting, congratulations, you're on the podcast. But until then, ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com to learn more, to find all the info. We'll be back next time, as I am Will Tarashuk. It's T as in Thomas, Arashuk, your returning champion, saying goodbye, good night, and keep on podcasting.